Images of Shakira before she fell under your influence show her full of life, healthy and smiling.
Holbeck Row sits quietly in the Walpole Wold of Ealing in West London. Its residential crescent just far enough from the clamour of the city to feel like its own self-contained world. Nestled between tree-lined streets and the occasional hum of the Elizabeth line in the distance, it's a place where people know their neighbours. If not by name, then at least by face. This part of Ealing is upmarket, tidy and well cared for. It carries that comfortable, settled-in kind of charm that's hard to manufacture. It's a patchwork of post-war terraces, modern semis and a newer wave of flats that were built in recent years. Among them stands Lambert House, a 4-storey brick building completed in 2019 as part of a regeneration initiative to provide affordable homes for key workers and council tenants. Children often play in the communal courtyards between the buildings, and to most people Holbeck Row feels safe. It's the kind of place where nothing too extraordinary ever really happens. But then, on the 25th of September 2022, something did happen. Something horrific. It was Sunday, unremarkable in every way. At least at first. At Lambert House, the day had passed quietly. Residents went about their routines. Groceries were unpacked, windows were cracked open to let in the breeze. But on the 3rd floor of the building, one woman sat alone in her flat, increasingly troubled by a feeling she couldn't quite shake. For 2 weeks she hadn't seen her neighbour. There were no sounds from the unit next door, no movement behind the drawn blinds. At first she had told herself that it was nothing, that people often come and go. Perhaps her neighbour was staying with family, or maybe she'd gone away on holiday. But now something had changed. There was a smell, and it wasn't faint. It was the kind of smell that lingered in the hallway and clung to fabric. It seemed to seep through the seams of the building itself, and it was only getting worse. By 4:30 p.m. that day, she couldn't ignore it any longer. She stood in the hallway, staring at the door of the neighbouring flat, willing herself to knock again, even though she already knew there would be no answer. She then reached for her phone and dialed 999. Shakira Spencer was born on the 13th of June 1987 to parents Lloyd and Marcia. She grew up in Ealing, West London. The Spencer family were close. Big family gatherings were a constant in Shakira's early life. Birthdays, christenings, weddings, there was always a reason to come together. Her sister Irina would later say, "We have a big extended family, so there were always birthdays, christenings, weddings to attend." In these moments, surrounded by loved ones, Shakira shone. But at school she stood out, and not in the way that children hoped for. She struggled. Learning didn't come easy to Shakira, and socialising even less so. She was quiet, reserved, and unsure of how to fit in. Shakira had learning difficulties and was often described as socially awkward, but that didn't tell the whole story. She was kind, earnest and thoughtful to a fault. Her mother, Marcia, said, "She was quiet and shy but would often come out of her shell a bit when she was surrounded by loved ones. She deeply cared about people and loved having friends to spend time with." Shakira wanted to be liked. That desire followed her into adulthood, shaping her relationships and at times leaving her painfully vulnerable. She had a trusting nature and a tendency to give more than she received, to bend herself in ways that others would never for her. In a world that can be so unkind, especially to those who struggle to fit in, that trait would become dangerous. But despite her challenges, Shakira had dreams, real ones, simple ones. She knew from a young age that she wanted to be a mother. That maternal instinct was always there. After finishing school, she began working in a nursery. Her mother used to joke that the chaos of toddlers might put her off having children of her own, but it didn't. Her mother recollected. She was really happy when she became a mum. Shakira gave birth to her first son in 2010, followed by a second boy the next year. 2 beautiful boys, close in age, just as Shakira had always wanted. Irina recollected. She loved being a mum. She'd wanted boys, close together, so she was happy. It was a period of Shakira's life that felt full. She felt like she had a purpose, and she took joy in the small things. The school drop-offs, bedtime routines, and packing lunches. For a time, things were good. Shakira was proud of the little life that she was building. But life is rarely simple. And for someone like Shakira, with such a deep desire to please, and an openness that was often mistaken for weakness, danger was never far away. When police arrived at Lambert House on the 25th of September 2022, they gathered outside flat number 9. The neighbour had made the phone call. Her voice was shaky with concern. She hadn't seen her neighbour, Shakira Spencer, in over 2 weeks, and now there was a smell. An unbearable smell. It wafted through the communal hallway, thick and putrid, hanging in the air like fog. When officers arrived, they noticed something else as well. Something far more sinister. Maggots were crawling out from beneath the sealed threshold of Shakira's door, a line of them inching across the floor. Whatever was on the other side, it wasn't going to be easy to witness. The officers didn't wait. They forced entry, kicking down the front door. But it was clear almost immediately that time had already run out. The smell hit them like a wall. It was the unmistakable stench of death, the kind of smell that would follow them home. Inside, the flat was quiet and still. The officers called out Shakira's name, but they knew she wouldn't answer. They began their search slowly, methodically stepping through the rooms, drawn like magnets towards the source of the odour. It led them into a bedroom, and that's where they found her. At the back of the room stood a child's bunk bed, and on the bottom bunk was a body. It was Shakira Spencer, or what was left of her. Her remains were so severely decomposed that her face was gone. Her skin, her features, the very essence of what once made her Shakira, was all erased by time and decay. Her body was being consumed by maggots. The scene was grotesque. But it wasn't just what they saw what disturbed the officers. It was what didn't make sense. Beside her body, a newspaper had been laid out neatly on the floor, almost as if she had been reading it before drifting off to sleep. It was a strange detail, almost staged. In the room, incense had been lit. It was clear that this was no peaceful death. There were no signs of medical emergencies, no medications, no evidence that Shakira had simply passed in her sleep. Her remains were removed from the flat and taken for post-mortem examination, but the pathologist quickly ran into an obstacle. Shakira's body was so decomposed, so ravaged by the process of death, that it was impossible to determine a clear cause. She needed to be formally identified through her dental records. That's how far gone she was. But even through the decay, the damage was still visible. Shakira had suffered crushing injuries to her ear, the kind of trauma that was consistent with blunt force. There were deep cuts to her scalp and her feet had been scalded. These weren't the injuries of an accidental fall or an untreated illness. Shakira Spencer had been tortured to death. As the news of Shakira Spencer's death broke headlines across the United Kingdom, public shock quickly turned to questions. How could something so violent happen to somebody so quietly living her life? And how could it go unnoticed for so long? The investigation was now underway and led by Detective Chief Inspector Brian Howie. It didn't take long for him to appear before the cameras, appealing to the public for information. "I need to know why people would want to harm Shakira," he said. Behind the scenes, Shakira's family was being supported by specially trained officers. The trauma they were facing was immense. They hadn't only lost a daughter, a sister, a mother, but they were now being told that she had died in pain, in fear and alone. DCI Howie continued, "I would urge anyone with information, no matter how insignificant you think it might be, to get in touch with my team." And somebody did. The first tip came from the very neighbour who had called police to report Shakira missing. This woman had known Shakira for around 10 years. She described her as pleasant and friendly, the kind of neighbour you were always happy to run into in the hallway. But in recent months, she said that something had changed. Shakira had always been known for her curves, a vibrant curvy size 16, with long thick hair and a warm, beautiful face. But now, the woman said, Shakira was unrecognisable. She was just skin and bones. Her cheeks were sunken, her eyes were ringed with heavy bags, her frame looked frail, almost breakable. She had lost a drastic amount of weight. And then there was her behaviour. Shakira had been cutting people off. She'd lost touch with her family. She'd even lost custody of her 2 boys to their father, which stunned those who knew how deeply she loved them. The more detectives looked, the more they realised this wasn't a sudden tragedy. This was the tail end of something that had been building in the shadows for months, maybe even longer. Shakira's father, Lloyd, told detectives that he had noticed the changes in his daughter as well. Every time he tried to visit her, she had an excuse. She was busy, she wasn't feeling well, she didn't want to see anybody. But just a couple of months before her death, he did see her, just 3 days before her 35th birthday. What he saw had left him shaken. Shakira looked gaunt. Her body language was guarded, almost jittery. She didn't look like herself, and she didn't act like herself either. Lloyd was terrified. The only thing that made sense to him at the time, the only thing that could explain the sudden weight loss, the isolation and the erratic behaviour, was drugs. Lloyd asked his daughter and she denied it, but he wasn't convinced. He begged her to see a doctor. He thought that she was ill, maybe seriously. Something was clearly wrong. But the truth was far worse than he ever could have imagined. Just after midnight, the phone rang at the police station. The voice on the other end was quiet, nervous and hesitant. It was a man calling about his sister, Shaun Pendlebury, and her son, Shaun. Only hours earlier, Shaun had turned up at his mother's home in a state of visible panic. He was pale, shaken and sweating. Something was wrong. Michelle asked him what was going on and pressed him to explain himself. And then Shaun told her that he had done something really bad. Michelle didn't understand. What kind of bad? He said he had burned someone's feet, and now they were dead. Michelle stared at her son, stunned. She still didn't understand what he was saying. She hadn't seen the news. She had no idea about Shakira Spencer. She asked him, who? And then Shaun said her name, Shakira. He said that he had killed her, but not on purpose and not alone. He told his mother that 2 other women were involved, Ashana Studholme and Lisa Richardson. He said they'd all been there. Michelle didn't know what to do. Her son had just confessed to something horrific, but she didn't want to hand him in. She got in the car and drove Shaun over to her brother's home. But when they arrived, things didn't go the way Shaun had hoped. His uncle was horrified. He asked him, "Are you a killer now? Do you just go around killing people?" Shaun denied it. He said it wasn't him and claimed he didn't lay a hand on Shakira. But the women, Studholme and Richardson, were the ones who had done it. He said he had only helped clean up afterwards. Then Shaun made a request. He asked his uncle for help buying a ticket to the Seychelles, where his grandmother lived. He wanted out of the country. He wanted to run. But instead, Shaun's uncle called police, and the trio were arrested.
Listen to what I've got to say. This is very important to you. Okay? So you've been arrested on suspicion of the murder of Shakira Spencer at 9 Lambeth House, okay? Between the 31st of the 8th and the 26th of the 9th. In relation to that, you do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention when questioned, something which you later rely on in court. Anything you do say may be given in evidence. Necessity for your arrest is to prevent your disappearance, for a prompt and effective investigation, and for the prevention of harm, okay?
Yeah, but I've never did caution or anything, so I don't know why you're saying.
You're under caution at the moment. My advice would be wait until you've had the opportunity to have legal advice before you make any further comment in relation to the allegations against you, okay?
That phone call would crack the case wide open. Up until now, detectives had very few leads, but now they had names, 3 of them. Shaun Pendlebury, Ashana Studholme, Lisa Richardson. And soon, detectives would uncover something far more disturbing than they could have ever expected. Shakira wasn't killed in some heat of the moment attack. Shakira had spent the last months of her life living as a slave. In 2021, Shakira Spencer met a woman who on the surface seemed kind. Her name was Ashana Studholme, and she was a neighbour who lived nearby. Shakira, who was ever eager to make friends, began to trust her. But Shakira couldn't have known who Studholme really was. Behind the compliments and the sweet smiles was a long, violent history. Studholme had a criminal record that stretched back years, including 3 convictions for attacking other women. In one case, she had kicked and punched a woman who was lying helpless in the middle of the street. 4 years later, she assaulted another woman in a racially aggravated attack. She had also received a caution after a child under her care fell from a flat roof while left unattended in a paddling pool. This wasn't a woman looking for friendship. This was a predator, and Shakira, a woman who was vulnerable, trusting, eager to be liked, was her perfect target. At the time, Studholme was in a relationship with Shaun Pendlebury, a man with his own history of violence. His convictions included drug offences, assaulting police officers, and handling stolen goods. Together, the pair moved through a chaotic and volatile social world, often in the company of Lisa Richardson, a 43-year-old woman who lived in Northolt. Richardson's flat had a reputation. It was described by neighbours as a hive of antisocial behaviour. People came and went at all hours. Arguments broke out in the stairwells. It was the kind of place where trouble had a permanent residence. And it was in this world that Shakira was pulled slowly and deliberately. At first, it looked like a friendship. Harmless messages, likes and comments on Facebook. In one, Studholme called her a natural beauty. In another, she wrote, pretty. To somebody like Shakira, quiet, shy, with intellectual disabilities and a desperate need to be accepted, these comments meant everything. She thought she had found someone who genuinely cared. But behind that screen, Studholme was laying a trap. She introduced Shakira to a darker side of life, one filled with late-night drinking, drug use and chaotic parties. This wasn't the kind of world that Shakira had known, but she didn't say no. She wanted to be liked. And slowly, Studholme took control. She used the cover of COVID lockdowns to ramp up her influence. She told Shakira to break up with her partner. She discouraged her from seeing her family. She began to isolate her. Emotionally, socially, physically. Then the control escalated. Studholme, Pendlebury and Richardson began to own Shakira. They took over her bank accounts. Studholme changed her benefit forms to redirect payments to herself. They started to force Shakira into sex work, and whatever money she earned, they took. Shakira stopped being a friend. She became a possession. She was passed between the 3 like a commodity, living in their homes, used for cooking and cleaning, sent on errands to buy groceries. She was no longer treated like a person. And then came the violence. They didn't just beat Shakira, they tortured her. They used their fists, their feet, belts, glass bottles. They even scalded her feet with boiling water. Her body became frail and skeletal. From a size 16, she dropped to a size 6 in a matter of months. Shakira was starving, and they gave her nothing but ketchup sachets to eat. Shakira's hair, which was once long and thick, was crudely chopped off. Her face was bruised, her eyes were often blackened. They didn't even let her sleep in a bed. Shakira was forced to sleep in a hallway on crumpled newspapers like a discarded pet. Some nights she wasn't even allowed inside. She was made to sleep in a bike shed. And when Pendlebury moved into her flat, her final safe space was gone. Towards the end of August 2022, Shakira was stopped by police while running errands for the group. They were concerned. Her appearance shocked them, the bruises, the sunken face, the black eyes. But when they asked what had happened, Shakira said nothing. She was worn down by the terror, humiliation and isolation, and the police just let her go. The torment that Shakira Spencer endured wasn't a secret kept behind closed doors. It was something that her abusers celebrated. They boasted about what they were doing. They laughed and documented her pain. In July, Lisa Richardson sent a series of text messages to a friend named Carla. She wrote, "I've just fucked this bitch up. This bitch, she ain't going nowhere. I'm going to smash her up, no joke." And then again she wrote, "I'm going to mash up Shakira." A day later, Richardson's followed up with another message which read, "So at the end of the day, she deserved everything she got. I didn't even beat her that much. I just gave her a couple of slaps. A tappy-tap slap, 1, 2, 3, but no." Richardson then sent photographs of Shakira to her friends. Her nose was clearly injured, as if she had just been punched in the face. In another photograph, Shakira lay unconscious on a sofa in Richardson's flat. Her face was battered, and Richardson had written, "Look who I've got." Another afternoon, Studholme struck Shakira in the head with a glass bottle. Blood spattered on the wall. In a panic, she texted Richardson, "I've bust her head in. I need you here. I'll go to jail." But none of them stopped. Pendlebury escalated things further. He chased Shakira with a homemade blowtorch made with a lighter held to an aerosol can. Boiling water was poured on her feet. CCTV footage in the surrounding area would later capture what they had done to her. Shakira moved differently now. She hobbled down the street, visibly in pain and struggling to walk. Her feet had been scalded so badly that she could barely walk. Her eyes were bruised and sunken, and her expression was vacant. Shakira looked like a ghost. She was clearly dying in plain sight. The abuse didn't stop, and it didn't taper off. It escalated until Shakira Spencer was barely clinging to life. It was the 11th or 12th of September when everything came to a final brutal head. Inside Ashana Studholme's home, the violence began again, but this time, it would be the last time. That morning, Shaun Pendlebury dragged Shakira off the floor. He hurled her against the oven and her skull struck metal. Then he set upon her again, chasing her with a lighter and an aerosol can, burning her flesh. Studholme poured boiling water over her. Later that day, Richardson saw Shakira standing in the kitchen. She was just standing there. She wasn't crying, she wasn't speaking. The only sound she could make was a faint murmur, "Bub, bub, bub." She was barely clinging to life. They all knew it. That night, Pendlebury borrowed his aunt's Honda Civic. He parked it outside Studholme's flat. When it was dark enough, they bundled Shakira into the boot of the car. She was still alive. A neighbour would later recall seeing her stumbling towards the car. She looked confused and lost. Pendlebury and Studholme drove across London back to Shakira's flat in Ealing. There, they shoved her into a hallway cupboard, locked the door, and walked away. They knew that she would die in there. Back at Studholme's flat, Richardson joined them. They scrubbed everything, the blood, the filth, the smell. They erased Shakira from the scene. Then they went out for kebabs. They were caught on CCTV laughing and joking as they returned. A few days later, they returned to Shakira's flat. She was dead. Her body was slumped in the tiny cupboard where they had left her. Now they had a problem. They didn't want to just leave her there. That would look suspicious. So Pendlebury came up with a plan. He borrowed a caravan from his aunt, and the idea was to stuff Shakira's body inside and abandon it somewhere far away. But it was already too late. Shakira's body was already decomposing. The smell and bodily fluids was more than they could handle. So instead, they dragged Shakira's corpse into the bedroom and laid it out on the bottom bunk of a child's bed. They wanted it to look natural, as if Shakira had just died peacefully in her sleep. They lit incense to try and cover the stench of rot. They even packed ice around Shakira's body, a crude and desperate attempt to slow the inevitable decomposition. Then they laid out a newspaper beside the bed, as if Shakira had been reading when death came for her. And just like before, they started cleaning. They scrubbed their flats. They erased fingerprints, burned clothing, discarded phones. They tried to vanish every trace of what they had done to Shakira Spencer. But truth has a way of rotting its way to the surface. And soon it would. On the 29th of September, justice finally began to stir. Shaun Pendlebury, Ashana Studholme and Lisa Richardson stood in the dock side by side at a magistrate's court in London. They were each charged with murder. Pendlebury and Studholme also faced charges of conspiracy to cause grievous bodily harm and preventing a lawful burial. All three of them pleaded not guilty. They had all denied involvement in their interviews with police.
Do you have anything to do with her death?
No, I did not.
Do you know who did?
Prosecutor Ben Holt stood before the court. He described a timeline soaked in brutality, a sustained campaign of abuse culminating in Shakira's death. He stated, "This case involves the exploitation of a vulnerable individual during a course of time, with assaults culminating in her death over a number of weeks." The judge didn't shy away either. He described the fatal assault not just as an attack, but as something closer to torture. Detective Chief Inspector Brian Howie spoke outside the courtroom and said, "I am pleased that we have secured charges against the three individuals and we continue to work to get justice for Shakira's family." He added that the family were understandably devastated and were still being supported by specially trained officers. The trial began almost a year later on the 11th of September 2023 at the Old Bailey. The courtroom was silent as prosecutor Alison Hunter KC rose to her feet. She told the jury that Shakira Spencer had been reduced to a slave. Her body and mind dominated and destroyed by three people standing just feet away. Her former neighbour, Ashana Studholme, Studholme's partner, Shaun Pendlebury, and their friend Lisa Richardson. She stated, "For whatever was their unfathomable, cruel, sadistic motive, these three defendants tormented, tortured, starved, burned, and eventually battered Shakira Spencer to death." She stood with photographs of Shakira taken just before she died and described what the camera had captured. She said to the jury, "In early 2021, Shakira Spencer had been a healthy, even voluptuous size 16, weighing some 74 kilograms. By July 2022, she was just skin and bone, gaunt, skeletal, bruised from head to foot, her eyes hollow and black. She was barely a scrawny size 6 in the images taken by the defendants, as they laughed and mocked her condition." The court was then shown the evidence, photographs and videos, the very same ones the trio had proudly taken. There was no denying what had happened to Shakira Spencer. Her suffering had been recorded. The testimony began with someone who knew the accused all too well, Michelle Pendlebury, Shaun's mother. She had once been close friends with Ashana Studholme, but by the time she took the witness stand, that friendship had long since fractured. She told the court that Studholme was a controlling force, not just over Shakira, but over her son and over Lisa Richardson too. It was the foundation of the defence, that all of them, in their own way, had been manipulated and controlled just like Shakira. Michelle testified that she had known what was happening, that she had seen it firsthand. And worse, that Studholme had even forced her to hit Shakira. She said to the jury, "She'll make you hit her too. She gets you riled up, and you don't even know why. You're just worked up." Michelle confessed that she had hit Shakira once. She said that she was sorry and she wasn't proud of it. She painted a picture of a woman, Studholme, who was opinionated, aggressive, and demanding. A woman who wanted people under her feet 24 hours a day. She said, "It was Michelle, can you do this, do that?" Even with her partner, she treated them like dogs. She described Studholme's moods as violent and unpredictable. One moment she was kind, even magnetic. The next, it was like somebody had flipped a switch. Michelle was asked whether she found some of these qualities attractive, and she said yes. When asked whether she had fallen under Studholme's spell, she replied simply, "Yeah, she seemed to have it figured out at times." Then the courtroom fell silent. The next witness was Shaun Pendlebury, taking the stand for the first time. He denied having anything to do with Shakira's death, even though he had confessed to his uncle and mother. He claimed that when he saw her, she was already in a bad way, that it was Studholme who had put her in the cupboard, that he just drove her home. Prosecutor Alison Hunter leaned in, her voice cold but composed as she said, "Is a cupboard a place where people are left to die?" Pendlebury shrugged and replied, "No, how am I meant to know where people are left to die?" He told the jury that on the 13th of September he had gone back to Shakira's flat. He said he heard a noise from the cupboard, and when he opened it, Shakira was still alive. He claimed he asked her if she needed an ambulance, but she said no. He said he helped her out of the cupboard and onto the bunk bed. He said that he made her some soup and helped her to drink it. Pendlebury said he left the flat and only found out Shakira had died when Studholme called him. But that story didn't align with what others had said. Multiple witnesses had seen Pendlebury drag Shakira across the floor, slam her into the oven and burn her with a lighter and aerosol can. There was even the CCTV footage that showed Pendlebury on the 12th of September taking bin bags out of Studholme's flat. He told the court they were full of bloody tissues used to clean the walls where Studholme had attacked Shakira. But the prosecution wasn't buying it. More CCTV footage captured Pendlebury and Studholme together, returning from Shakira's flat after leaving her there to die. They were laughing and joking as Shakira Spencer lay dying. After Pendlebury's testimony, the final defendant to take the stand was Lisa Richardson. She had once called the Ashana Studholme like family. Now, standing before the jury, she claimed that she too had been controlled. She stated, "She knew I was scared of her, just her charisma and that. I'm quite a fearful person." Like Pendlebury, Richardson insisted that she had been under Studholme's influence. But the evidence told a much darker story. She had poured boiling water on Shakira. She had burned her using aerosol and a lighter. She had joined in, not intervened. And when asked what the motive was, why they did it, all she could say was, "I don't know why it happened." She claimed that she had watched in horror as Shakira was tortured. She testified that Studholme had doused her in boiling water and Pendlebury had burned her skin with a flame. But if Richardson had been horrified, the evidence suggested otherwise. After the torture, after Shakira had been stuffed into that cupboard, Richardson sent a text message. She said she wanted to move closer to Studholme. Prosecutor Richardson wasn't buying it. He confronted her with the message and said, "I suggest you're seeking to blame her in your defence so you avoid being convicted of murder." Richardson denied it, but the prosecution had more. She had recorded the abuse of Shakira. She had taken photographs and videos of her suffering. She had even been part of a video call with Pendlebury during a torture session. As she said, she didn't want to miss out on the amusement. In addition to the CCTV surveillance of the killers with Shakira, there was forensic evidence as well. Shakira's blood was found in Studholme's apartment. Her blood was found on Pendlebury's shoes. There was also evidence of Studholme using Shakira's bank cards at various stores. After that, the trial drew to a close. Ashana Studholme refused to testify. She clearly had nothing to say. Prosecutor Alison Hunter made her final appeal to the jury. She reminded them of what the trio had done after Shakira died, stating, "They cleaned up the scene as best they could. They arranged Shakira Spencer as if she had been reading. The windows around the flat were left open, the door barricaded. Then Pendlebury went to the car from the other side of the building. They concealed the death of Shakira Spencer. They isolated her from everyone she knew, even her own family." Then she paused, and she said what everyone in the courtroom was thinking. They are guilty of murder, and it really is murder of the most foul. They are guilty of denying a decent burial, and I hope you do not lose 1 second of sleep if you find them so. The jury deliberated for 18 hours. When they returned to court, the atmosphere was tense, the public gallery was packed, and then the verdicts were read out. Guilty on all charges. The courtroom was stunned, and Pendlebury showed his true colours. He began to clap as if mocking the court before he stormed out of the dock. The judge adjourned sentencing and excused the jury from service for life. The trial had been that horrific. Outside the courthouse, Detective Chief Inspector Howie addressed the media and said, "Shakira was a beautiful, happy mother. She was kind and had a trusting nature." He said that she had been exploited, controlled and enslaved in the most dehumanising way imaginable. He said, "I think she just wanted to be cared for, loved, to have a friendship group around her. She was coerced and manipulated over a long period of time by these people. On the 1st of March 2024, Studholme, Pendlebury and Richardson returned to court for sentencing. This time the jury was gone, but the evidence was far from over. The prosecution played chilling footage filmed by the three defendants themselves in the weeks leading up to Shakira's death. It showed them mocking her, taunting her and abusing her. Prosecutor Ben Holt told the court that the footage made one thing brutally clear. They were enjoying what they were doing. Then came the victim impact statements. Shakira's son, whose name was protected by law, submitted a heartbreaking statement. He said he suffered nightmares every single night. He said that he couldn't get the image of his mother out of his head, how skinny she looked, how unwell. And then he asked, why were they so heartless? What could cause them to torture another human? He told the court that his mother wasn't perfect, but she made him feel safe, happy and loved. And then through tears he said, I miss her every single day and wish for a chance to see and speak with her again. I never got to say goodbye to her or tell her that I loved her. These people let her die alone, feeling she was unloved, because they had taken everybody from her. Then Shakira's mother spoke. She said the defendants had stripped her daughter of everything that made her who she was. She stated, they isolated her from her family and friends. Her health deteriorated and she was almost unrecognisable. She said when Shakira was at her lowest, they had tortured and murdered her like a pack of animals. Judge Angela Rafferty then addressed the court and the three defendants who sat before her.
Shakira Spencer was a healthy and loving young woman of 35 years old. Images of Shakira before she fell under your influence show her full of life, healthy and smiling. She is unrecognisable at the end, emaciated, broken. All who watched it will be slow to forget the CCTV footage of Shakira trying to walk on scalded feet in the middle of the night.
She turned to Pendlebury and said, you lived in a flat while she slept in the bike shed. To Studholme, she said, you started as a friend but ended as the worst kind of enemy a person could have. And to Richardson, she said, you showed Shakira nothing but exceptional contempt and aggression. She spoke of how Shakira had been humiliated, degraded and dehumanised. How she had been soft, trusting and completely exploitable. She said, she was no match for the three of you. She noted their complete lack of empathy, their refusal to accept responsibility, their total absence of remorse. She told Studholme directly, you're not mentally ill. You're dominant, aggressive and manipulative. To Pendlebury, she acknowledged his low IQ and follower's nature, but she made it clear, you were fully involved. And then came the sentences. Life in prison with a minimum term of 34 years. After the sentencing, Shakira's father Lloyd spoke publicly for the first time. He had travelled to Guyana in 2020 only to get stuck there during the pandemic. And he said the words that haunt so many parents in tragedy. I regret going. I feel like I could have saved her. He said those three made his daughter feel like she finally found friends, people who cared about her. But they were never her friends, he said. They brainwashed her into thinking they were doing right by her. She didn't realise they were grooming her, to get her place, to take her money, to control her life. And then, with a voice full of pain, he said, they broke her soul. That is it for this episode of Morbidology. As always, thank you so much for listening, and I'd like to say a massive thank you to my newest supporter up on Patreon, Veronica. As you all know, Morbidology is a one-woman team, so the support up on there seriously goes such a long way. I upload ad-free and early release episodes, behind the scenes, and I also send out a thank you card along with some cool merch. There's also a bunch of bonus episodes of Morbidology Plus that aren't on the regular podcast platforms. And you can even suggest a case for me to cover up on there. Remember to check us out at morbidology.com for more information about this episode and to read some true crime articles. Until next time, take care of yourselves, stay safe, and have an amazing week.